Can you honestly believe that at the time of recording, we're already at 140 plus cards spoiled for set 7? I mean, that's insane. In 6 days, I streamed twice this week, actually 3 times this week, actually 4 times this week, discussing all the cards as they were coming out. And it's the weekend. It got busy. I couldn't just stream during the day because I got kids and a family and all that fun stuff. But seriously, I had to catch up because otherwise I'd fall way too far behind. And by the time Tuesday morning got here, the whole set would be spoiled and it'd be a mess. So today, while we're here, we're going to break down the last couple days of things that we didn't have a chance to talk about yet on the channel. Yeah, there's a lot. Let's get into it. The Tramp is a 7-cost inkable, 2 strength, 6 willpower, and 2 lore with 2 abilities. The first ability is for each character you have in play, you pay 1 less to play this character. The second ability is when you play this character, you may draw a card for each other character you have in play, then choose and discard the same number of cards. So the Tramp is pretty big boy, 2 strength on a 7-cost, always has me a bit hesitant. The idea that our opponent can just very easily brawl this or seize through this at a cost of 7 is a ton. It's also not a shift target, so it's not like we can get it into play and do it right away. The second ability is interesting, but it's really dependent on how many cards that you already have. And on average, I don't know that it's going to be worth it. I feel like Stitch Carefree Surfer is just a functional, better card than this. But for the Lady and the Tramp fans, if we're just looking to, dive in and just play kind of like that whole archetype and say, hey, this is my story deck and I'm going to be excited about it, I guess it's fine. But in terms of like really playing this card in a competitive manner, I'm not sure that I quite see that just yet. It Felix is a 5-cost inkable, 4 strength, 4 willpower, and 2 lore character. Felix's ability is when you return a racer from your discard pile to your hand, you may ready chosen racer character, and they cannot quest for the rest of the turn. 5 costs, 4/4, 2 lore, stats is fine. The ability to ready racers along with getting them back, so it kind of combos with the Calhoun that we had seen. Also potentially comboing with some other cards from the past. But all in all, I don't think you're going to play this card unless you really need more racers. Again, Wreck-It Ralph racer deck, if that's what you're into, the theme here, it's quite fitting for that. Maybe it sees some love in some more limited formats in general, but I think for competitive, probably not quite there for Fixer Felix here. Shang is a 3-cost uninkable, 2 strength, 3 willpower, 1 lore with the ability this character can challenge ready characters, and as long as this character is damaged, he gains +2 strength. So for 3 cost, you get a 2/3, which is fine. It is uninkable, so it's low conditionary. It does have the ability to attack exerted characters, but in all honesty, I feel like it has the ability to attack ready characters, but in all honesty, I feel like this card is just a little bit understated for this. The 3 willpower with the ability to gain +2 strength if damage is nice. You can get to a 4, but I still feel like the first time you do damage, it might not be enough. The 2 willpower kind of just gets picked off too late in the game against a lot of the more ruby removal and things like that. So I just feel like this card is going to feel a little bit short and not necessarily even good for your Ruby Steel Challenge Matters decks. I just feel like there's going to end up being much better cards than this in that deck. The legendary Mickey is a 2-cost uninkable, 1 strength, 1 willpower, and 1 lore. He is the inspirational warrior with the ability Stirring Spirit. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may play a character for free. Pretty interesting ability here on the 2-cost 1/1. Yes, there are lots of ways to kind of turn this character on, and in all honesty, I think this is going to be the first time that we've seen another Mickey Mouse, the Trumpeteer, with an ability similar to this. It's just like it's got to survive, you got to do the thing, and there's not really a way to quicken, or give the ability to exert the turn you play Trumpeteer. So because of that, it's never really picked up. It's never really felt worth it. This card, on the other hand, has the ability to kind of combo a little bit better with cards like Cogsworth, with cards like Crab. Pocket Watch comes to mind. There's a couple different ways to give this guy rush, and then therefore use his ability right away. What I think that where I kind of am landing on this card is that if there is any world where it's good, okay, if it exists, then I don't think it's going to be saying, oh my God, I'm going to put 10 cost Goofy in my deck, and I'm going to like try and live the dream and have a Cogsworth, a Madam Mim, the Mickey Mouse, and this giant Goofy all in my hand at once. I don't think we can live in that world. I think that's like way too fairy tale land. But if you told me that we're just going to put this character in our deck and it's a hero and we can utilize it with, an Amber Steel with Phil, we can use it with Sapphire Steel and use Imperial Bows. And this way we kind of have a way to like turn him on. We have a way to like gain conditional lore with him, but we also can just swing up and kind of utilize him. Honestly, in Amethyst, I would be happy to just like drop a Genie for free, or I'd be happy to drop a big Tinkerbell for free. For the Sapphire decks, if I just dropped a Baymax for free, like anything that I can go well above curve and drop, I'm going to be happy with. But it also has to be a character that A, is inkable, B, that I'm going to be able to play in my game no matter what. Like this would just be like extra bonus value to play the character rather than saying, oh, I got to do the thing and I played some 10 cost character. I don't think that that's where you want to be, because in games where you don't have this like crazy combo where Mickey all of a sudden just gets the trade and does what he wants to do, it means you have a giant card stuck in your hand doing absolutely nothing. So that's why I think that this card, if it's going to be good, it's going to be conditionally good in decks that can kind of utilize a bunch of characters already that do what he wants to do, but enable you to just like play a slightly above curve. Again, if you just put a Genie into play for free, I mean, that's just like saying, hey, I sung a song for free, I gained 2 lore, and I drew a card. Like, it's kind of similar. It's obviously a little bit better than that because characters are lasting. So any world where we can just put a character into play for free, and it's a good character that you would play in every game anyway, I think that's where this card is going to be good. So I'm not interested in like crazy fairy tale combos, but I am interested in just saying, like, if this guy can come into play and take a character out, and then I just, drop a nice little curve card, that's a pretty big win. We'll see if he sticks. I'm not really sure yet. The other talk of the town is Minnie Mouse. The 2-cost, uninkable, 1 strength, 2 willpower storyteller, story hero born with 2 abilities. Gather around. When you play this character gains +1 lore this turn. And just one more, whenever this character quests, chosen character loses strength equal to this character's lore until the start of your next turn. So this ability is pretty interesting. The idea that she has 0 lore to start is a bit worrisome. It means that you have to kind of really get away with playing multiple cards after her for her to gain lore, for her ability to ever matter. But it is one of those cards that has the ability to protect itself long term, which I think is interesting. I just don't know. There's a lot of talk about what this card can replace in certain decks, and in all honesty, I'm not totally sold on it. I think right now the 1 strength is just too free into Sisus that I expect to see even more of now because of Sapphire Coil. So I just don't know that if you can really rely on a 2-cost uninkable 1 strength that you're just going to like play in your aggro deck, because I think it just plays automatically into what Ruby Sapphire even wants you to do. So I'm a little hesitant. And the idea that you have to play a character in order for this to even gain lore, to even use its second effect. If it had a 1 base lore, I would be a lot closer and saying like, okay, at least I can give someone minus strength for a turn and guarantee it. But I don't like the idea that, on average, this might only give -1 strength. So all in all, not a huge fan of Minnie Mouse here. 4 costs, 2 strength, 3 willpower, 2 lore, Emerald, Ruby character Griefer. With the abilities Evasive, and each time this character quests, you may give another character of yours Evasives until the start of your next turn. So this is pretty interesting. It comes in with 2 lore and a 2/3 Evasive. So it does survive Genies. It survives Elsa's, which is nice. You can kind of like not instantly go away, but it also gives the Evasive to other characters, which I think is very interesting. In Emerald's Ruby is a in combination that we're not particularly familiar with. There's been very limited amounts of the card being good or the combination being good, but being able to give, like, let's say your Robin Hood evasive is pretty nice, because now it means that you can quest with your Robin Hood, flip over your cards, play your action for free, quest with this, give your Robin Hood evasive, and just makes it a little bit more harder to deal with. All in all, though, both of these characters and, this character in general, specifically with the 2 strength right now in the metagame, I just don't know if we're going to be able to play cards like this. Paying 4 for this and then it just immediately getting removed before ever doing anything could be a problem. If the card had ward and this ability to grant ward or evasive, we might be a little bit closer. But in all honesty, I think that this is going to probably fall short. However, for limited play, this card is likely an absolute bomb. There was a bunch of updates recently, too, by the way. Shout out to Disney Lorcana for the Discord. They have been slowly adding the English versions of cards. And listen, I'm a big fan of just everyone getting their moment to have their card, to showcase it in their language and all those things. But it is nice, the idea that Disney Lorcana is kind of following up, making sure everyone has their languages for their cards, so it's easier to showcase them. Obviously, it's not particularly easy for me to showcase cards of foreign because I don't know exactly what they do at first glance, and I have to kind of rely on whatever the translation may or may not be. So it is nice that saying hey, a couple days after cards are revealed, we are still getting these English versions imported. That's a big deal to me. So at this point, 140 plus cards, right? I mean, that is an insane amount of cards. Let me know right now in the comments, what is your favorite card reveal so far? I think for me, it's probably Ink Geyser. I think that card is very interesting. I'm going to be really excited to play with it. And obviously, I've been on kind of a Emerald Sapphire kick already. So having a brand new card come out and an ink combination that I've been enjoying is really nice to say. And that's really difficult for me because I'm not the biggest Sapphire fan in general. But I really like that type of card and what it offers, kind of just in a deck creation aspect. I do think that very early on, you're going to see 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 different versions of that card kind of being utilized. It'll be really interesting to see how that sticks early on in March as we start getting these cards in our hand and start playing with them. So let me know in the comments, what are you looking forward to so far out of Archazia Island? Shout out to our friends, the Lore Chronicles, on having 2 awesome reveals. The first is Helga Sinclair, the 2-cost uninkable 0 strength 4 willpower 1 lore with Challenger 3 and the ability of quick reflexes. During your turn, this character gains evasive. So Helga, in the video that Dick and Natalie did, they actually buried Diablo, which I thought was so funny. The idea that we can have an 0-4 in our deck that just gains Challenger 3 and evasive is very notable and very difficult for the Emerald Steel decks to kind of deal with. They have to use multiple songs in her or just kind of accept the fate that their Diablo, even sitting in a cove, is going to get banished. I do think this 0-4 is quite interesting. I wish it was just always evasive. Then it would have been a phenomenal card and a really kind of a difficult choice to make for deck builders. I'm a little worried that if evasive isn't that necessarily in the format and it's not really a requirement right now, that this card's probably going to fall behind. I'd even argue, as crazy as this sounds, that if this card was inkable, it still might not necessarily be a guaranteed deck slot. So because of that, that's kind of where I'm at with this card. As much as I like it, as much as I wish we had it, I probably wish we had it 2 sets ago instead of now, because Diablo is a lot less of a threat, and 3 Challenger isn't enough to get rid of genies or Elsas and things like that. So all in all, I think that this one might end up being a miss or just a very subtle tech card from time to time. The Treasure Guardian is a 4-cost, inkable, 3 strength, 3 willpower, 2 lore, amethyst character, Storyborn, with the ability Untold Treasure. When you play this character, if you have an illusion character in play, you may draw a card. So obviously, this is just the illusion theme deck, a little bit archetype here. You're not going to play this outside of illusions, and right now we've only seen 2 or 3 illusions, I think. So I don't know if you can comfortably play this card just yet. Maybe as time goes on and we get more and more illusions, maybe if there's 5 or 6 more illusions in the last 60 cards of the set, which, by the way, I don't think is possible. It's probably a little crazy to assume that we're just going to get 10 illusions. I don't know. Maybe. Considering that we don't, illusions aren't like Madrigals or something like that, where there's a whole set based around them. I don't expect to have 10 of them, if I'm being honest, but hey, anything's possible. Right now, we only have the Raj and the Cobra, and then Jafar, and then Iago. So, there's only 3 of those that are actually illusions. Jafar's not. This is also not an illusion, so it's not like it can trigger off itself on the second one. But being a Dolores that you can control in an illusion deck would make this card fine. I just don't know if we're going to get those cards for it to be fine just yet. Mulan, Disguised Soldier, is an inkable 1-cost character for steel with 2 strength, 1 willpower, and 1 lore with the ability, Where do I sign in? When you play this character, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. I like Mulan quite a bit. It's very similar to the Yzma Future King, which we have seen from time to time come up more recently because of the Floodborn Yzma from Azurite Sea. So a card like Mulan here, gaining a shift target in this format as well, in the shape of the Ruby Steel Mulan, along with also having the Mulan from set 4, I believe it was, that has the shift and kind of come in and hit like big swingy targets with her shift ability, which I wish I'm going to put it on screen probably. But I like the idea that we got another 1-cost Mulan to have that. I like the idea that it's in steel and we can ditch our extra Whole New Worlds, or we can ditch our extra docks, or whatever just card is like laying around our hand that we don't need. And it is, innately a good shift target for either of the other bigger Mulans. Outside of that, I'm not sure how much this is better than, any other given looter effect. Honestly, quite commonly in Disney Lorcana, we have not seen the looter effect been very successful. Zimbo is pretty much the best one that comes to mind. There was a time where Cinderella was kind of sort of played, but not really. But for 1 cost and helping you shape your hand early on in the game, maybe after a bad mulligan and things like that, I could definitely see Mulan pop up every now and then in certain steel lists. 3 cost, inkable Ruby character, 3 strength, 3 willpower, and 1 lore. Cogsworth, the Climbing Clock, with the ability Still Useful. While you have an item card in your discard, this character gets +2 strength. This character is effectively a 5/3 on 3, which is very interesting. It definitely breaks serve on a lot of other characters at this particular cost. I'm not exactly positive that the Ruby decks need this card, but the idea that it's inkable and can be a 5/3 pretty easily is notable. If there is going to be some type of breaker in the game in which 5 willpower is an important number to get to, I actually think that Cogsworth might find a way into decks. If we remember back in time, there was actually a point in time in the game where we played Fidget because it was a 3/2 evasive that just took out Minnie Mouse surfers. This is kind of similar to me, where like if it's required, then this card exists to utilize it. We'll see. Right now, I don't think there's any room for this in any decks, and it's not particularly required. But it's nice to know that, hey, if we need a 5-strength character on turn 3, well, there's at least an option for it now. Our good friend, the Wizard, Wonderland revealed the Cheshire Cat, the 5-cost, inkable, 4 strength, 3 willpower, 2 lore, emerald character with the ability Mad Grin. When you play this character, you may deal 2 damage to chosen damage character. The funniest thing and specific comment that I heard about this card is that it's actually just better than the set championship Scar. It's very hard to argue that. I actually think it's pretty fair. I think that there are enough cards right now for Emerald to start playing a bit differently and start putting cards like this into play. It's very early to say that this is like some staple. However, if that deck exists and if there's enough ways to just get damage freely on characters, having a 5-cost 4/3 that comes into play and like finishes a character off isn't the worst thing ever. In Limited, this card is certainly very insane. Without a shadow of a doubt, this is definitely a card you're going to play as many copies as you have in Limited, period. But again, I think with a lot of the exploring going on Archazia Island in that set, there's a world where all of a sudden these effects that deal damage to damaged characters, there might be enough of them now, and there might be enough ways to get damage on easier that some of these effects really start getting looked at and we start considering them a bit more. Huge shout out to the Wizard again on an awesome reveal. Maurice, the Unconventional Eventer, is a 4-cost inkable, 5 strength, 2 willpower with 1 lore, and the ability, How on Earth Did That Happen? When you play this character, you may banish chosen item of yours to draw a card. If the banished item is named Maurice's Machine, you may also banish chosen character with 2 strength or less. Now, to get the full effect of this card, let's also take out Maurice's Machine, which is a 3-cost inkable Ruby Sapphire item only, and the ability Breakdown. When this item is banished, you may return an item card with cost 2 or less from your discard to your hand. So the pair of them together can come in, which means on turn 3, we could play our Maurice's machine. On turn 4, we could play our workshop. We could banish our machine, and then we can go and get back a 2 cost or less from the discard pile. Now, on average, that probably doesn't actually happen that way. We are very unlikely to do all of those things. However, if there becomes a nice way to banish certain items, maybe a little easier, if there is a reason to banish certain items more often, then maybe this combo starts to work. There has to be like something out there for you to be banishing early to get the full effect of Maurice. Because the problem is with Maurice is that when you play this card on curve, you have the best chance of hitting a 2 strength or less character. The later we go in the game, the more difficult it is to for your Maurice's workshop, Maurice's machine to still be in play, and B, for you to actually have a 2 strength or less to interact with. Now, the cool thing about this is obviously it stacks with Sapphire Coil, which, by the way, we've already stated right there. Sapphire Coil is cracked, and it will be, and I'm afraid. But I think there's just too much, maybe, of combo things that have to go on. So at this moment, I'm not totally buying into Maurice, but there is a world where, like, hey, if there is some item that is worth banishing early that does, I don't know, anything for us that makes sense, and maybe it is just Popsicle, right? Like, we can just accept that Popsicle's a card, and we can play it on 1, we can draw a card, and we can just banish it whenever we want to, so we can get this, like, whole forward effect from it. But the idea that we have to take an entire turn off to play Workshop, and then present nothing to the board, and then play Maurice to hope Maurice does the thing, like banish the Workshop and banish a character, like maybe that's what happens if we get back our Popsicle too, and like that feels like okay, but I'm still not completely sold on it, because in a world where Sapphire Coil, again, is cracked, then there's going to be a bunch of characters running around that just answer items, and you might just get like your Maurice's machine banished by a Benja, and then all of a sudden your Maurice does basically nothing. So lots to think about there. I think it's possible if we get enough items that we want to banish early that this just ends up working out later. With stacking with Sapphire Coil, you can just kind of like banish whatever card you want when you banish the Workshop. But it's basically like saying, hey, for 7 or maybe even 9, because we have to include Sapphire Coil in this, we can be a Maleficent that also gets back an item. So while it's all there, and while there's combos to be had with it, it might not be that easy to pull off. But I do think it's interesting. I kind of love the lore behind it and how that all works together. I just wish that maybe it was like a 2 and a 3 instead of a 3 and a 4. I don't know if that would have been broken, but at least it would have been closer to like more interesting and more like I want to do this all the time. Baymax, the upgraded robot, is a 5-cost inkable, 3 strength, 5 willpower with 1 lore. He also has the ability of support and advanced scanner. When you play this character, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a Floodborn character card and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is a 5-cost for Floodborn characters. Very similar to Ariel, very similar to the Tinkerbell, which was the 1/4 that found characters. This character is inkable, which is nice. The 3/5 stat line is not the worst. Support is a keyword that we really never get too much love, but there's a bunch of cards that are making support a little bit more interesting in Archazia Island. So there's possible that support adds up here, and maybe we start seeing a little bit more play with these cards. And the idea that we can just like find a Floodborn in our deck is very interesting. Obviously, we know that we already have the universal shift Baymax that can easily be found. Right now, with playing support cards and the cards like Clarabelle, maybe it helps us find Clarabelle, maybe it helps us find Mother Gothel. Like, it definitely has the ability to help us get to the next portion of the game at 5 cost, being a nice little body, which can be a little more difficult to deal with, and turn our T-Pos into 4/2s that can kind of trade up pretty nicely. There might be a world for this card. Not completely sold on it yet, but I do think that it's closer than other cards for sure. Our devious friend, Lorcana villain, had the privilege of revealing Basil, the Secret Informer. The 6-cost inkable emerald character with 3 strength, 6 willpower, and 3 lore, and the ability Draw Them Out. When this character quests, opposing damage character gains Reckless during their next turn. I'm not crazy about this card. If it was when play and when quest, I think it would be a lot closer. All in all, I do think the 3/6 for 3 is great. And I think that I like the idea that it has this ability that could come up and be relevant. But I just feel like this card's going to be too slow and it might not ever do anything on average because you have to kind of like work into it. And it just feels like, unlike other characters that can banish damage things or at least help you banish damage things, the idea of giving something reckless after this card quest and sits around for a turn, it just feels like for your 6 cost, I don't know that you can commit that much to it and hope that it's there to do the thing. So because of that, I feel like Basil's going to fall short. But hey, Baker got to reveal another rat, so I'm sure he's happy about that. 3 more coils were revealed by Illuminaire Cass. We have the Steel Coil here, which is a 2-cost uninkable steel item with metallic flow. During your turn, whenever a card is put in your inkwell, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. We have the Ruby Coil, which is a 2-cost inkable ruby item with the ability Crimson Spark. During your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, chosen character gets +2 strength this turn. And finally, the 1-cost inkable Amber Coil, which is Healing Aura. During your turn, whenever a card is put in your inkwell, you may remove 2 damage from chosen character. So the 3 are pretty interesting. It's nice to know that we have multiple. In all honesty, we just have like 6 coils. What is not nice to know is that Sapphire Coil is cracked, and I don't think any of these other coils are cracked. I will say, maybe Royal Ruby Coil has a chance. It does enable some interesting things and some fun things for the Amber Ruby decks. The idea that can turn on Minnie Mouses and turn on World's Greatest Criminal Mime is notable. The idea that can also push Maximus to another level might be interesting. So while I think there's a lot of like good things that could come with this, it's just clearly not as straightforward as Sapphire Coil. So without a doubt, Sapphire Coil is the best coil. Lyle Tiberius Rourke is an 8-cost inkable, 6 strength, 4 willpower, 3 lore ruby character, which is a storyborn villain with the ability Explosive. Once during your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, deal 2 damage to each character in play, which does, of course, include himself. This is a really interesting card. A lot of people are wondering why this card wasn't steel and why it's ruby. And the answer at the end of the day is that steel cards only deal damage to opposing cards, where ruby damage have always dealt damage to themselves and opposing cards. So the idea that this is kind of a on ink super teeth and ambitions is very interesting. The art on this card is very creepy. Not a fan. Like it kind of weirds me out a little bit. It's wonderful. It's great, but it's creepy. This guy might just be too expensive to ever really get. The idea that he's also only once per turn. It'd be cool if you could just like get him out and then the next turn just say, all right, I'm gonna deal 4 to the board by inking twice with an Azurite Sea or something like that, or some other way to get extra cards in the inkwell. But since it's only ever 2 and he costs 8 and he inevitably also kind of banishes himself, that's kind of interesting. Maybe there's a world where he's interesting with Rapunzel, so you can ink, do 2 damage to the board, play Rapunzel, heal him, draw 2 cards. I don't know. I feel like the card costs too much. I think if this card costs 6, it would be like really interesting and close. I think at 8, it's just way too expensive to ever really commit to. Finally, we have Penny in the game as well. The 2-cost inkable Amber Steel character, 1 strength, 2 willpower, and 2 lore with the ability Enduring Loyalty. When you play this character, you may remove up to 2 damage from chosen character, and they gain resist 1 until the start of your next turn. I think Penny is fine. Shout out to Additional Ink for the reveal. This is a card that I'm not sure if it will really replace anything or do anything crazy. Not even being a hero kind of takes away from it. Storyborn Ally it makes sense because like that's obviously fitting, but I just feel like there's much better cards to play in this ink combination for 2. And while removing 2 damage and gaining resist is nice and it's cute for a turn, I don't know that it's good enough like overall, and it's gonna like this card not being able to fight back is really difficult. I just look at what that list is and like what that deck is, and I don't know that you could replace a Lilo with this card. You can't replace Smee. You're not going to replace Calhoun on most cases. You're not going to replace Piglet. Like None of those things are probably going to happen. It is next turn, so maybe there's a world where this is slightly better than like Piglet or some number of Lilos, and you can kind of choose between them. But it's still really difficult. Again, 1 strength, 2 lore, or 1 strength, 2 willpower means you're banished by basically anything in this format. So you have to get a ton out of Enduring Loyalty. And I don't know how much on average you're going to get that. Obviously, off the top, this card is super mid. It can do it to itself, and it can, get around to Let the Storm Mage on or something like that. But I still don't know that it's enough. So while it's interesting, I just don't know if it's going to fit in the current decks, if I'm being honest. Anna, the 4-cost, inkable, Amethyst Sapphire character with 2 strength, 3 willpower, 2 lore, the Icebreaker, a Dreamborn Hero Queen Sorcerer with support and Winter Ambush. When you play this character, chosen opposing character can't ready at the start of their next turn. So the character has to be already exerted in order for Anna's ability to do pretty much anything at all. Therefore, I think this card is going to fall pretty short, which is kind of sad. I feel like the Elsa and Anna for Sapphire Amethyst both feel a little short. I feel like they both could have cost 1 less and been much closer and a little bit more fun, kind of lean into the frozen powers of Sapphire Amethyst. But it just feels like both of them are overcosted and maybe even understated for their cost. And I think because of that, they're both going to just like not end up being quite playable. And if I'm being completely honest, if we're already building a Sapphire Amethyst Frozen deck, there's just better Elsas out there. It's hard to say there's better Annas, but like there kind of sort of is. This might be okay for the Floodborn Anna as a target. I don't know. I'm not crazy about it. It really makes me sad because I'm a big Frozen fan, and I feel like Elsa and Anna were kind of a letdown for Sapphire Amethyst players. Jebediah Fansworth is a 4-cost, inkable, 3 strength, 3 willpower, 1 lore character with support and the ability, I got your 4 basic food groups. When you play this character, chosen character gains resist 1 until the start of next turn. Interesting, different. It's fine. Probably not going to see any play. There's just better 4-cost 3/3s in the game for 1 lore that do way better things, way cooler things. And I just don't think that this is going to find a home probably almost anywhere. Cinderella, the 4-cost, inkable, 2 strength, 4 willpower, 2 lore, amber character with the ability, if the slipper fits. When you play this character, you may put an item card named the Glass Slipper from your discard on the bottom of your deck to gain 3 lore. So early in the week, Glass Slipper came out. We talked about it. I said, no chance it's good. No chance we're going to play it. This card helps. Kinda. Do I think it's enough? No. But do I think people are going to try and like live the dream and tutor their deck and find this Cinderella and then like play it, get their slipper back and gain 3 lore? Yes, I do. Is that good? I don't think so, but it's very flavorful. Huge, over the moon, flavorful. 100%. Competitive, constructed, playable? I don't think so, guys. I'm just saying. If you want a challenge, by all means. There's your challenge. Yzma, Transformed Kitten, is a 2-cost, inkable, 2 strength, 1 willpower character with the ability, I win. When this character is banished, if you have more cards in your hand than each opponent, you may return this card to your hand. We've seen this effect over and over again. It's come up from time to time in competitive a little bit with cards like Hey Hey and things like that, but in all honesty, probably a little bit under what you would consider to be that good enough. It is probably a nuisance in limited, but it still might not be. So hard to say. Interesting, cute little kitten here. Just don't know how much love it's going to actually get. Chernabog. Creature of the Night is a 5-cost, inkable, 2 strength, 6 willpower with 1 lore, and the ability Midnight Reveal, or Midnight Revel. When you play this character, each opponent chooses and exerts one of their ready characters. They can't ready at the start of their next turn. This card's ability is very interesting, very good, and I think pretty close to actually being playable. A card very often right now we're seeing Ruby Sapphire decks kind of just jam Sharks into play on turn 6, and then just know that they get to stomp you and prevent you from kind of moving the game forward. Chernabog here might be a nice little addition answer to that. I do understand that a 5 cost on Inkable is expensive, but in a world where it's specifically targeting these types of boards and removing a problematic character for multiple turns, or even setting you up and enabling you to be able to remove a problematic character much easier in Amethyst because of cards like Crab and things like that, there might be a world that this card does sneak into play in some number in Amethyst decks. Plus, the art is an absolute banger again. Shere Khan is a 4 cost, inkable, 4 strength, 4 willpower with 4 lore and the ability when you play him, discard your hand. Now, I know, we can talk about this a little bit. Obviously, 4, 4, 4 for 4 is pretty good. Statistically makes a lot of sense. Upside, 0. You have to discard your hand when you play him. Can it be comboed? Of course it can. Obviously, with Clarabelle, this card's probably awesome in aggro Clarabelle decks. I could totally see a world where we're shifting Clarabelle early, and then our follow-up is just hey, I'm just gonna ink my turn, do my thing, and then put the 4/4 with 4 lore into play, discard my hand, and say, oh, how many cards do you have? Cool. I'll just draw back up. That's interesting. At least it's cool. But if this is let's say we're the top end of an aggro deck and it's the last card we're playing, all right, well, it's interesting because it is a 4/4 with 4 lore. But unless that 4 lore is we're at 16 going to 20, we're now playing off the top of our deck. A little tough. So I don't know what to think about this card. Do I think it's interesting? Yes. Do I think it combos well in Emerald? Yes. Will it make the cut? Time will tell. Am I excited to try it and say, hey, I discarded my hand to Shere Khan, put a 4/4/4 into play, and then drew 5 cards with Clarabelle? Yeah, I hope I can do that. I'm just being real. All is found. Man, do I love this song from Frozen 2. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. So good. The ability on this 5 cost inkable Sapphire song is put 2 cards from your discard pile into your inkwell face down and exert it. I don't know the exact wording on this just yet for translate it. I'm not positive if it means that we can actually ink uninkables when doing this. By that translation, it says that we should, but I'm not positive that that's how it's going to be. We'll have to see. Time to tell. If it comes out and you already know the answer to that, feel free to let me know in the comments. Tell me I'm dumb. I'm okay with that too. But right now, for 5, to put 2 cards from our discard pile just into our inkwell, that doesn't seem that bad. Oswald loves this card. I'm very excited for Oswald. The idea that we can kind of no longer be too worried about the cards in our hand. This might enable a world where we don't have to play cards like Fishbone Quill, and we can kind of utilize a Popsicle if we want to. We can just play Popsicle, get its thing, draw its card, pop it into the discard pile, and then all of a sudden play this, put 2 cards into the inkwell, trigger the Oswald twice. I think that's really interesting. We'll have to see. All in all, adorable art, awesome song, and we'll see where it ends up. Unfortunately, I didn't get the translation for the name of this card, but its ability on a 2 cost uninkable Amethyst action is each player draws 3 cards. So Amethyst Chromacon is an interesting card. We've seen it come up and play time to time, where over the course of the game, it's certainly over 3 turns, it would let you draw 3 cards. If you told me for 2 ink on an uninkable that I can draw 3 and my opponent can draw 3, but I'm ahead and it doesn't feel like my opponent can catch me, this card might be really good. Hard to say for sure, but drawing 3 for 2, even at the cost of giving your opponent 3, that's pretty good. There might be some real legs in this card. In multiplayer, this card's awesome. You are everyone's best friend. You're yep, everybody just draw 3 cards. Let's keep playing, yada, yada, yada. No, I don't know. This card's interesting. It's very hard to judge this because there's games where it will be bad, real bad, because it's uninkable and you can't get rid of it. So that's a bit of a problem. But then there's going to be games where this card's going to feel awesome. So time will tell. But I think that this is definitely one that is worth playing and kind of getting a feel for. We'll see. Milo Thatch is a 2 cost inkable, 2 strength, 2 willpower, 1 lore with the ability when you play an action, you may give chosen character +2 strength this turn. There's a bunch of +2 strength out of Ruby characters in this set, and a lot of it's going to start adding up to something. Certainly that Maximus that I keep referencing from Shimmering Skies might finally have enough ways to just gain a bunch of lore unexpectedly, which would be cool. The idea that it does turn on the cards, like I said before, World's Greatest Criminal Mind, the Minnie Mouse, anything that's going to enable you to remove 5 strength characters when you so choose. Maybe there's something going on there for Amber Ruby. All in all, really tough to say on average. I do think it's interesting to note that if you were to play World's Greatest Criminal Mind, you'd have to resolve World's Greatest Criminal Mind before I'm Your Guy ability. So don't think that you can kind of stack it in your favorable way. Unfortunately, that's not how Disney Lorcana works, and it has to register the song being played to its completion before you can actually get this ability. So it's not super, super good. And because of that, that alone might keep this off the radar for most things. But at least it's another interesting way to utilize this effect, and maybe we'll see what people can do with it. Snow White, Fairest in the Land is a 4-cost inkable, 2 strength, 2 willpower, 2 lore with the ability Hidden Away. This character can't be challenged. This is probably the best card in the set for limited. The idea that this is a 4-cost inkable with 2 lore that can never be challenged is actually insane. This card is so interesting that I'm shocked it's not a legendary, if I'm being completely honest. That effect is so very interesting that to put it on an uncommon feels wrong. This is a card I honestly feel like could be a promo card. This might be one of the league cards that we see for league nights. Everything about it is great and perfect. I don't think it's particularly constructed playable. I could be wrong. I don't think so, but it's very, very interesting. That text is very, very powerful. Just think of it as a location that your opponents can't challenge. So you have to find another way to do 2 damage to this, or remove a 2 strength character or less, from play. And in limited, it's going to be very difficult to do. Whereas in constructed, there's a million ways to interact with this card, which is why I don't think it's going to get there. But all in all, very interesting card for sure. Here we are with 2 more reveals. The Suzy, 4-cost inkable, 3 strength, 4 willpower, 2 lore for Amber characters, just an ally. And the 2-cost inkable Sir Kay, 2 strength, 2 willpower, 2 lore Ruby character. Both vanillas, both 2 lore. Probably just as they are, unless they are vanillas for Floodborn characters that we haven't seen yet. I don't see a particular reason why you end up playing either of these cards, unfortunately. 100 Acres of Ink revealed a couple cards tonight, and it was the Family Madrigal, which is a 5-cost inkable Amber Amethyst Song. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may reveal 1 Madrigal character card and up to 1 song card and put them into your hand. Put the rest on top of your deck in any order. So a little bit of problems here. I wish they just put the cards on the bottom. It would be way better, because I imagine if you Family Madrigal and you see 0, that means you didn't get anything from this song, and the next 5 cards might not be anything that you actually want. Chances are, if we are playing the Family Madrigal, we are likely only playing songs and Madrigals in our deck, would be my guess. This does pair well with the Mirabelle that we had seen a couple days ago, which we were very excited to see of hey, this card's awesome, but what songs are we going to play with it that are going to matter in this ink combination? Well, we got the answer. The answer is Family Madrigal. The problem that I'm going to see very early on is what cards are we going to be able to play that are going to help us win the game. We have seen a couple that might make it interesting. I will say, in terms of theme decks, this is a card that puts you really close. The Madrigal 3-cost singer for 3-cost singer 5 puts you a little close. I think we're going to have a lot of ways to do it, and it'll be interesting if this becomes at least, let's say a tier 2 deck or a tier 2.5 deck, to where you might be able to bring this to your local tournaments and not feel that awful going into competitive decks. Hard to say, but there is a lot of synergy there, and maybe we find it. Peppa Madrigal is a 3-cost inkable, 2 strength, 4 willpower, 1 lore. Whenever one or more of your characters sings a song, gain 1 lore. Very similar to the Rooster. But he was, whenever you played a song, gain a lore, and he didn't see any play. I don't know if this will see any play, but it is a Madrigal. So, hey, if we are just playing Madrigal only, then this card certainly does work into the scheme of the deck. Dolores is a 1-cost Amethyst character with 1 strength, 2 willpower, 1 lore, and the ability of I Hear You. Whenever one of your characters sings a song, chosen opponent reveals their hand. Interesting effect. Again, you have to complete the song in order to get this ability. So particular songs, that you might have to target and do things with aren't going to be necessarily helpful. Like, let's just say, we do sing the family madrigal and we're saying, okay, what do I need right now? What do I need to put in order on top of my deck? You have to make all those decisions before the I Hear You ability. So it's kind of just the way the Disney Lorcana works. I wish that you could stack this in favor so you could have the information from I Hear You in order to then get the correct cards from Family Madrigal. Because it doesn't, it feels kind of all backwards, and it kind of is going to honestly maybe even leave you feel kind of crappy about it. So that's my only kind of downfall is I wish there was just a way that we could get these abilities to work more synergy wise than we actually do. And with that, that is all of the cards revealed so far. Again, 141 cards this week. And if I'm being honest, maybe I missed one here or there, but it was a lot in a week. I didn't want to fall behind because I don't plan on doing another live stream until Tuesday, maybe not even Wednesday. We'll see how it goes. It might just be like, hey, let's let the finish set, and then we'll just do one, like a 60 card span in a stream. So if you haven't yet and you want to catch that, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoyed this, my kind of like quick tidbit, I know I say quick, but it was still like an hour, but hey, it was a lot of cards. So hit that like button for me. It does help. I just kind of getting through all these cards as we get and start approaching the real content. If you're really looking for things, we're going to be building brand new decks. We're going to be talking about the best cards from the set that you should attack financially, and for cards that are really interesting to start with in general. There's a lot of interesting themes and archetypes in this, which also kind of completed previous sets. We talked about the racers a bit. We now have the Madrigals kind of coming in as those last 3 cards really showcasing. There's some more love for that. So there's going to be a lot of different archetypes to talk about from Archazia Island, and I'm really excited for it. It's a lot of content to be had. So if you do enjoy content like that, again, hit that subscribe button for me. If you made it all the way through this, you're the best. You're awesome. You can definitely check out one of the live streams that are linked right here. If you're bored and you haven't watched them yet, another couple hours of me just talking about cards with the community. So thank you guys so much for watching today. Catch you in the next one.